that students really, when it comes to applying to Queens, they do not understand just how important the supplemental portion of their application is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm doing really good, Ari. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great because we're doing the admission prep pod and we're talking about one of the most popular universities in the country, Queen's. And whether you're applying to commerce, health sciences, engineering, arts, nursing, even concurrent education, this episode is here today to help you understand how to get in and how to stand out. What we're going to cover is the best programs at Queen's, what you need to do to get in, what makes the application process so unique, and we're going to break down the exact rubric that Cleans uses to actually grade applicants and select their top students for that year. And we're going to do this with Nicola, who's helped over 1,000 students through the advising process of getting into top universities. So, Nicola, let's start things off. I mean, outside of being, I think it's the oldest or one of the oldest universities that's founded in 1841, and it's ranked as one of the top five universities in Canada. Why Queens? What makes it such a great school, and what are those top programs that students are after?
Yeah, I think Queens, first of all, I think it's got a beautiful campus. So many students that I know that go there talk about the campus, how much they love it there. I think Queens, very diverse community, also known for its research, definitely known for many of its programs, but I would say health science, commerce, nursing. I would say those are definitely very popular programs, but they have a lot of other ones like engineering as well too is also great
Yeah,
there. But I'd say health science and their commerce program, Smith School of Business is definitely very competitive. And and many students applying to Queens. And I right now it's kind of funny that we're doing it right now because a lot of students are getting their offers back right now. So it's sort of, we're waiting. We've waited a long time to hear back from Queens. And right now, maybe and through the next week, we're going to be hearing, I think, some of those offers. So a lot of grade 12 students are kind of hanging on, just
right.
waiting for those results. Yeah.
We should have done this podcast a year ago.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
I mean, for the grade 9, 10s, and 11s listening now, it'll be useful for them going forward. Okay, gotcha. And you talked a bit about Smith School of Business, and you talked about life sciences, sorry, health sciences, being those key programs. What makes them so competitive, and what makes them so compelling for students as well?
Well, I just think, I mean, first of all, like health science and commerce, like naturally, like that, those are two programs that no matter what school you really go to are very competitive. But I think, for Queens, it really comes down to that, the school is obviously looking for students that have are very good at their academics. So have very high
Mhm.
grades. So it's always going to be the first thing that comes out of my mouth is it's, definitely important no matter what school you're going to. But I think Queens, when it comes to their supplemental, they're looking for students that can really show that breadth, that can show that they not only have some great activities, can
Mhm.
really show the maturity, the growth, the problem solving, the communication, the collaboration. Like they love to see students have had those experiences. And, that's exactly why, Queens uses like a rubric and also uses the type of supplementary that they do. And communication, like a student being able to really communicate clearly, the answers, both written and verbal, is so important. And I think
Right.
a lot of students kind of think, doesn't matter too much. It really does, and so
Yeah.
it pays to really have some thought about what you're going to talk about and what you're going to write about,
Mm.
um, because it has a, we'll go into it, I guess, but there's a written part that I think a lot of students, they just think, well, I don't know what the question's going to be. So, I'll just I'll wing it. Right. Well, there needs to be no
Don't
winging
wing it.
when it comes to your application. So, yeah. But I think Queens is just like, it's a school that many students apply to every single year. And sometimes Queens is not the first choice for students, but after they've done some research, after they visited campus, after they've talked to other people that have gone there, they change their mind and they end up, accepting their offers.
Yeah, and I think another part of what makes Queens so great and why so many families go there, for the more analytical students out there, and there's a lot of them. What a lot of students don't know is about Queens employment rate.
Yes.
6% of Queens graduates aren't employed within 6 months of graduation. Now, what that means is it means 94% are employed within 6 months of graduation, right? Which, and this was research done, reported by Queen's University in 2021 for
Yeah.
graduates in 2019.
Yes.
And that's, I think, one of the things that is super important when you're looking at programs and schools you're looking at is what is the likelihood of you getting that job? And so far, at least from what we have last reported, Queens really stands out and they do a great job of that. And I think students care about that along with having a beautiful campus, finding student satisfaction. It really does make it stand out. And you mentioned a little bit about their holistic approach to admissions.
Right.
Obviously, grades matter. That is a minimum in many ways when you're applying to these schools. I want to dive into the the personal statement of experience. If I've got that right, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That important supplemental that you were talking about and why it's so important. And then I want to dive into the rubric, but I want to move into that. And did I get it right, by the way?
Well, yeah. So the PSC actually that is for students taking concurrent education. That the PSC, that's what you're talking about, is definitely something, and that's basically just a written statement. It's yeah, like you telling Queens your personal brand, you telling them why you want to go into education, talk about your experience. It's kind of, I guess, kind of like a cover letter, basically. Very
Okay,
important. For the other programs, Queens changed a few years back. They changed their PSE for some of their programs, commerce, also health sciences and nursing. They changed it over to a supplemental that's basically timed. And what they
right.
do is they give you a rubric, and the rubric sort of outlines, what they're looking for. So they tell you what they want to see, and what answers they kind of want to hear. And basically, you get about 10 minutes to write a response, a written response, and you have up to like 335 words to answer a question that they're going to give you. We do not know the exact question. However, if you look at the rubric, you can probably figure out what they're going to ask you. And
Yeah.
what you can do, I mean, that's just so powerful, right? Because what you can do then is take a look at take a look at your activities, take a look at like experiences that you think are going to best show Queens, how you demonstrate how you demonstrate conflict, or how you demonstrate getting through challenges, or working with a group, or right. So you can sort of like put something together before you actually go into that time. And I think, again, that's what I mean. Like by saying students don't really know, I have seen students that just kind of jump on, and they go, oh, I didn't really expect that. I didn't like, and I was kind of caught off guard. So I think it's important to understand it, and then definitely prepare. And yeah, so the rubric
And
also.
we'll dive into the rubric. Could you break down the timed aspect of things? Because you mentioned that preparation, and some part of it is timed, and some isn't. Could you break down roughly how that works? I think that's really important because sometimes people are listening and they're like, "Oh, well, I just have to. What do you mean prepare? How did I not know it? I had the questions in advance." So what part of the Queen's application is timed, and could you break that down?
Right. So it's actually the whole, okay. So the supplementary for those three programs, it's all timed. Okay. So it's all
Mm,
timed. So the written part's timed, and the verbal part is also, you have a time limit to give your answer as well too. So they're both timed. But the key thing is first of all, if you have 10 minutes to write something, you know, they're giving you that 10 minutes for a reason. They're giving you, so you want to, and I would say most students, they need the full 10 minutes. If not, they could have used more time. But for the verbal part as well, too, I think some students just think, oh, I can give just sort of a short answer that doesn't really have any meaning. No, you need to be able to use the time that's given to you, which is about 2 to 3 minutes, and really answer that question as much as you
mm.
need. possibly can, so that you can meet all of the criteria that Queens is looking for. So it's all timed. But there are, like, I know with the Queens supplemental, there's lots of practice that you can do. Like once you do, um, like Queens provides like a platform that you register on, and there is lots of time for you to prepare and practice. But it's really, the practice is great, but a student really needs to know themselves. Like you've got to know yourself. You've got to
Right.
know what is the best way to really show Queens who you are. And so that all comes from you. That all comes from like your preparation, your activities,
Mhm.
knowing why you've done those things. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. That okay. I'm glad I wanted to break that down because I think students miss that. They think it's just like every other school, and schools have these tendencies to be slightly different,
Yes.
especially when you're applying to these competitive schools.
Right.
And now I want to actually dive into the
Hmm.
Queen's supplemental application rubric. I want to look at first the written one, and then I want to look at the interview one. And I want to hear from you what makes a great one, what makes not such a great one, and the biggest mistakes you see. So I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I know we
Yeah.
were all laughing earlier because we've never done a podcast with a screen share.
Yeah.
So
I
we'll
think
see how
it's a
this
good
goes.
idea, though, so people can actually, for this one especially, people can actually kind of see what we're discussing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think,
So
can I
I
see
want to
it?
quickly cover before I let you just like dive right into it. So this is the Queen Supplemental Application Rubric. You can find it on Queen's website. We have it on our website as well. So you just go to our blog and find our Queen's application guide. You'll see that there, but it's publicly available, and you can anyone who's watching this and wants to access it, you can check it out on our website as well. But
Yeah.
Nicola, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, yes.
This is the written one here. What do you want to cover?
So first of all, I want to say, I just want, so all of our viewers, I want to say that this is obviously the questions that they had for this year. So now, or the rubric that they had for this year. Now, next year, they might come up with something. So when applications come for, 2025 in September, this might change a little bit. Okay. It might. I would say typically sometimes schools do change every couple of years. Sometimes they change every year. So when we're going over this, is basically to kind of break down sort of like what the rubric is used for. But every year, just so viewers do know, like you might not get this rubric exactly when you do go to apply to Queens. Yeah. So first off, the written portion, yeah, like I said, they give you about 10 minutes, and they give you, you're allowed to write up to 335 words. So you're not allowed to go over that 335 words. I would say most students, it's difficult to write that anyhow in 10 minutes. But what you can do is you can definitely prepare something prior to this, prior to the time that you actually go on to the timed response. um, I would say, when you're looking at the rubric, you want to pay attention to, like on the rubric, there's um, they give you kind of like a scale or a score,
Yeah.
1 to 5. And, I pay very close attention to 5 because that's really all that matters, right? Okay, so because you really want to show this question. So we don't know what the question is going to be, but when we read this over, it talks about the applicant taking exceptional initiative in addressing challenges, okay, and seeking assistance if they need that, or demonstrating outstanding problem solving skills to work under changing conditions. Reflect meaningful on their experience, demonstrating significant personal growth and maturity. So I would perceive this question, or what the question is going to be like, would be probably something about, tell us about a time you had a challenge. What did you do? What was the outcome? What did you learn from it?
Mm,
Okay.
right.
So, so yeah, and it might not be exactly like that, but I would say for a student to prepare for that, obviously, like you need to think about something. You need to think about a time in your life. It could be an experience, it could be a club, it could be, maybe you play sports, maybe, whatever, maybe you work. Okay. And you had some sort of like challenge. And it could be anything. It could be like a relationship challenge. It could be, with a coworker, another student. It could be a challenge your group had, working on a project, like anything like that, or a personal challenge, right? Maybe you had an injury and you talk about the recovery process. But what you want to make sure of is that you go through you go through that and you make sure that you talk about it, sorry, you write about it in depth. So you're actually talking a little bit about the problem and about the challenge and the issue, more about the actions you took, the perseverance you had, the dedication to like getting over that obstacle. And then again, the very end of it says like you're able to reflect on what you learned from,
Yeah.
like, right. So that is, and Queens, that's what Queens is all about. They're really looking for, that breadth and like more about, your grit and, your willingness to like not give up and, are you able to problem solve and are you determined? And so that's the stuff that
Right.
they're actually looking for. Yeah.
And I think you've said it a whole bunch, sharing these examples of what it may be, finding that right example of what you've done, and then being able to write about it. How important is that reflection for in this application process that students need to be thinking about?
Yeah, the reflection is probably, I think for Queen, the reflection is probably the biggest part of it. And Yeah, because I mean, in this, if they're going to obviously ask you about a challenge or something like something to do with that, or maybe a time. Another example that I've heard is like a time you let yourself down or let somebody else down. Like, what did you do about it? It's not really the challenge. Like literally, if you're writing an essay that's 300 words, the focus should be the essay, the focus on the actual challenge or the problem or the issue. That should be probably maybe 10 to 15%, and then
Yes.
30% or 40% should be all of the things that you did. Like, you're not going to tell them that I used my problem solving skills. You're going to say, I acknowledged my mistake and then I put a procedure in place so that it would not happen again. Like, you're telling them how you did that, and
Yeah.
then and then the reflection part, yeah, it's like, I learned that, it's important to say, it's important to do what you say you're going to do. And it's important to be integrity, and it's important to complete things and show that, you are accountable, like to the things that you take responsibility for. Yeah.
Okay. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's fantastic. I think that might be one of the cleanest breakdowns of why reflection matters. And we have so many students who they do such wonderful things in the world,
Mhm.
or even if they have such wonderful ambitions in the world, but they just can't. They struggle to reflect on why they're doing it or even convey that. And I
Yes.
think it's so important. And I want to go into now. We've looked at the writing pieces of it. I want to understand. Nicola's very popular. Nicola's very popular. Getting a lot of phone calls.
Yes.
I want to go into the interview grading rubric. Um, but I guess before we go into the interview grading rubric, what is the biggest mistake you see on the Queen's writing, on the written supplemental application?
Okay, so like, yeah, so like when I am working with students, I have them write a couple of things out. Like, I do have them write a couple of different, because I think sometimes if you just go in with one idea, so I think it's really important, first of all, have a couple of things. Like, I think some people get so, what am I gonna talk about? What am I gonna talk about? And I think it's better to have two or three, first of all, two or three different samples that you're gonna have ready. That's the first thing, is so be prepared, have a couple of things, because we do not know what you will not know. No one
Yeah.
knows what question Queen will ask you. However, again, from the rubric, you're going to get a good idea of sort of what the question would be like. That's number one. I think number two is, yeah, not worrying about like, because you got to remember they're also looking at your communication, written and verbal communication. So, good written communication means good spelling. It means good sentence structure. It means like, having a very well, university level written essay.
Right. Yeah.
So, so just thinking, oh, I'm just going to go in and sort of type out some stuff, that I think that's the biggest mistake.
Gotcha.
You know, writing some things out, looking at it, reviewing it again, and then obviously you're typing it on the spot. Like, it's not like you're not like copying and pasting it. You actually have to type it. They want to see your typing skills. I would say, practice it, practice it, practice it. Like time yourself. Like that's just the way to, to get better at anything is through practice. Yeah, just I think the biggest mistake is not practicing, not having something ready or
Hmm.
having things ready and not actually doing it.
Yeah, I guess when you have a limited amount of time and a timer on, it's really not something you can wing.
No, no. And believe me, when you're on that and the time is ticking down, yeah, like you really feel the pressure. The heart rate's going to go up a little bit. You're going to have that pressure no matter what. Like, even the most relaxed will have that pressure. So I think the more prepared you are, the less pressure there will be when you're there.
Yeah, totally. And of course, you'll perform better that way for many students,
Yes,
right? And yeah, that's sound advice. Get prepped. It's in the name, admission prep as well. It's the number
yes,
one advice we give to every student. And I want to go into the interview now. I wanted to cover the biggest challenges on that. So I think there's students, they want to know how to do well, but they also want to know what to avoid. So here's the interview grading rubric here. This also goes from 1 to 5, covering what they're looking for. What are the key points here that you want to highlight for people at home who want to know how to stand out and look competitive?
yeah. So again, there's some things that they want to hear. And it's not so much about, again, the activity that you're talking about. To be honest, I don't think, I really don't think Queens puts any very little weight on like what that activity is. It's more about hitting these key points that they have in there. So this one, I would say, when I look at this, this one here, braces flexibility working. Yeah, I would say this one's more about a team, like working in a team and being able to collaborate and being able to, like, even if you're not the leader in the group, you are a part of the team and you want the team to, be successful. And so you do your part, whether it's, president or you're a member. And I think, the thing that, like would stand out here is really showing how you're able to solve problems in a team setting, how you're really open to accepting other people's opinions. You're going to like you're going to be working, like when you go to a university, no matter what university it is, you're going to be working with students from all different backgrounds, international
Yeah.
students, everybody's going to be different. And so everybody's going to have different opinions. And what they're trying to see is, like, are you going to be the type of student that is open to that and is open to, working in groups, and then also, being able to like help your teammates and
Mm,
take advice from your teammates, right? And that's so that's what they're trying to find here. And also, yeah, like also being the kind of person that really, even though you're a student and you're working very hard on your own education, but are you willing to like help other people along with their education as well?
mhm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, essentially, like if you look at this, it does seem to break down the
Yeah.
ability to work within a team,
Yes.
navigating challenges,
Yes. Resolve.
resolving conflicts within a team, and then
Yeah.
reflecting meaningfully and demonstrating growth and maturity. Could you touch on, because we hear this from parents all the time, is demonstrating growth and maturity, something obviously I think most people want their children to be able to do. What does that look like? What does that actually mean? What does that look like?
Well, I think it's like, I think here, like if I was to go through this with a student, I would say to them, like think about a time you worked in a team and maybe, you had a project and all of you were kind of all over the place. Like, this student wanted to do this, you wanted to do something else, John over here was, thinking way on the other end. And what kind of things did you do so that you could get your team together and also, like, do very well on that project, get a good grade, and have that team be successful. And I think students sometimes think, well, this is kind of like, it's kind of silly, but it really isn't. Queens wants to see like that you walk through those steps, like, maybe you sit your team down and you have everybody kind of give their opinion, and then maybe you talk to a few students individually just to make it a little bit easier for them, and
Mm,
then you have the team come together to make a decision as a team rather than everybody like participating just on an individual basis. And
mhm.
So that right there, it just shows maturity. Like it just shows that you're
Right.
doing things to get the team together. But I think yeah, I think it's just like saying, being able to say like why that's so important, like why in that situation is it important for your team to be to be more of a team, and why is it
Hmm.
important for everybody to be heard, like why it was important, like if you have 5 team members, all 5 team members, their opinion matters. And so saying things like that, being, everybody's included. We want, all of our participants to feel like what they say is being heard and that it's valuable. That's basically how you would show your growth and
Yeah.
within this, yeah.
And would
So
acknowledging mistakes and errors, I guess, would also be a big part of that?
absolutely. Absolutely. Taking accountability. Yeah, absolutely. Acknowledging mistakes, and then also, putting in place again, like I said in the first, putting in place like things that would, stop that mistake from happening, right? Again, like, maybe it will happen. Like, sometimes we got to make 3 or 4 mistakes to get it right. But it's like acknowledging you made a mistake, and doing something so that mistake doesn't happen again. Putting, concrete actions into place.
Gotcha. Okay. And now I want to ask again, because the answer was so good for the written part of it. What are the biggest mistakes students and families make when it comes to the interview side of the application process?
Yeah. So for the video response, I think the biggest thing is I think students worry so much about how they're going to sound. So it's
Hmm.
like, what if I'm not really good at public speaking. I'm not, um, I'm worried about messing my words up, and that's that. That is, I can understand that. That's definitely. And I think again that comes down to number one, being prepared. So when you do this part of it, again, have a couple of different examples. Okay, have
Hmm.
a couple, and like most students have worked in a team somewhere somehow. So think about team contributions, where you really helped the team navigate challenges or resolve conflicts. Pick a couple of things, write it. It should be written down. Like you have to write it out first. You can't just kind of go off the top of your head. Write it down to make sure that you've really outlined all of the key points, like what the actual team project was, what your part was in that, and then what the challenges were, and what did you do to like get through those challenges and help your team get through, and what did you learn from that. So show
Yeah.
demonstrate personal growth. And I think that's more important. And if you worrying about how you're gonna speak and being on camera, that's I understand it, but I think to
Took me
get
a while to get you on the podcast too, so I know you understand.
be prepared and practice, like sit and practice in front of your mom and dad, sit and practice with an advisor, sit and practice on your own. And believe me, it will get much easier. It will get much easier. You will feel more confident. And they don't expect you to be perfect. That's one thing. Don't
Right.
go in there and sound like, you don't want to sound like a robot. Like that's just like the worst. You want to be authentic. You want to use your own words. And that's to do that, you get as specific as you possibly can. Like you go into those little nitty gritty details, no matter how insignificant you think they are, they really do
Yeah.
matter. Yeah.
And I guess, do you find students are worried about trying to come across as perfect? Is that something you see? And like,
Oh,
what advice do you have for that?
Well, I think you first of all, it's just like it's not possible. Like it's just I don't think it's possible. So I think so. Don't try to be perfect. I think try to be um, as clear as you possibly can, and try to be as prepared as you possibly can, and be as authentic as you possibly can, because that will come through. That will absolutely come through, and queens will see that. They can tell if you're just kind of reading off of and like you basically thrown
Which
something.
no one should do.
No one should do. No, 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 no. And that's why I would say, obviously you're picking leadership roles, you're picking activities that you have actually done. Okay, like there's something that you've actually done, because yeah, like I mean, if you think about it, at any time they could look it up, they could find out, did you actually do, like they could do that, right? So just pick something that you are proud of. because I always think when you're proud of it, even if it was a tough time for you, even if it was something like, oh, like when I think back, that was so hard. Well, that's
Yeah.
probably a good thing because like you're still here to tell me about it. So
Yeah.
it'd be a good thing to talk about, you know? And I think, yeah, like the difficult things that you got through, sometimes those are the ones that you learn the most from. Sometimes those are the ones where you do actually demonstrate that personal growth and maturity.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Well, that was awesome. And I
Yeah.
think, with this here, I think we've covered almost everything
Yeah.
when it comes to Queens. Do you have any last advice for people in maybe 30 seconds to a minute for a family or a student who wants to go to Queens or another top university? What is a one piece of advice you want to give them before they go on to apply?
Um, yeah, I think probably again, yeah, I think it's preparation. I think just don't start this again a couple of weeks before you're gonna do this. I would say, give this time. I mean, some of my grade 11 students are like they may get different questions. However, it's not really about the question so much. It's about like you figuring out, some of your great involvements and like let's break it down, like what was so great about it, what was not so great about it, what were the challenges, how did you overcome them, what did you learn, what was the impact that you made. um,
Hmm.
like those are the things that you got to really pull out, and you got to know because that's what you're going to be expressing through your essay and
Yeah.
expressing through your verbal interview.
Yeah, totally. And I think what you said is right. It's like it doesn't even really matter if you've prepped and the questions are different. It doesn't matter what the questions are. Ultimately they're looking for great people, and your ability to reflect and share how you've grown is it's a skill in itself. And
It is.
it won't even matter what the questions are because you really just want to be good enough to handle the scenarios that come up, and that's how you'll actually belong when you're on campus as well. And I think students miss that. There's no shortcut. You just got to do it, and you got to
That's it.
just actually be good.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Nicola. That was a pleasure. I think diving into that detail, covering that is going to be fantastic for so many people, and always love having you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay.